All right, welcome to technical session number 1. This will be one of 50 that we will have throughout the course of this program. They will not be done in order. We do tend to jump around because we're trying to marry up all the different programs we are running simultaneously together, and so that we can kind of keep all the instruction on par with each other. This particular one is over the introduction to the industry, role, and pathway within the IT field. Throughout the course of this presentation, you should be able to describe opportunities and potential pathways for IT professionals and the value of being trained for an IT role. Explain the primary responsibilities of an IT professional and how those may play out in a given day. Also, you should be able to articulate the importance of getting to know the guidelines and norms within any employer organization. It will surprise you how often when they say, in this scenario, how often will you do this? Or what would you do first? Or which is the most important? The answer to that generally comes down to, it depends on the company. It depends on the rules and regulations that are set out by the organization you are working in. So that does need to be taken into account. All right. Also, we haven't gotten into these yet, but we will be diving into them. The behavior skills and mindsets that we want to take into account while working through this particular technical session are adaptability and future orientation. IT is an ever-changing world. We have to constantly be changing, learning, training, and developing. We have to be able to adjust to whatever situations we may be presented with and try to solve these problems and kind of be a detective, so to speak, when problems are brought to us, because a lot of times the solutions to these problems may not be easily apparent. And also future orientation. We need to be paying attention to the directions the industry is going, looking forward to those directions and seeing what we can do today to help prepare ourselves for the changes that are inevitably coming down the pipe. Currently, there is a big shift towards cloud computing. Most organizations, people in their individual lives, are tending to rely more heavily on cloud storage and cloud computing, viewing most softwares rather than a license where you would purchase it and then use it forever, however long you wish, and changing it over to a more subscription-based system. And that even goes for web servers. It goes for storage, where you can, some companies will give you, 15 gigs free storage. Others, and then when you go beyond that, you have to start paying a subscription service on a monthly basis to have access to significantly more storage if you need. And in general, it is cheaper than buying these hard drives or these storage systems and keeping them yourself in the beginning. It depends on how long you're going to be doing these things. But there are trade-offs. So if you're utilizing a public cloud like Amazon or something like that, or Google or Apple or Microsoft, if you're using one of these services, you're trading some convenience and cost to where you have a lower upfront cost, and it is significantly more convenient because you can link almost any device you have to it, but you're also giving up security and control over your own data. So understand these trade-offs when you're working with these systems, and organizations will also take that into account as well. How much security are they willing to give up in order to gain greater convenience or save in cost? So these are things that we'll be talking about throughout the course as well. So some questions for the gallery. Get one or two call outs. We'll let Mark select the call outs on this one. For the first question, we'll pick a couple. What do you already know about being an IT professional? What exactly does that mean for you? And raise your hand. We'll call on just a couple. So what do you already know about being an IT professional?
Rachel?
That me?
Yep.
Yes, Rachel Scott.
Okay. It means that you are a troubleshooter and a problem solver.
Okay. About Glean, you got your hand up, sir.
Echo what Rachel said about being a problem solver, but you're kind of the assist to whoever is doing any program designing or coding. You're the guy that makes sure that their system is working 100% so that they can do their job.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Going to the next question. Jessica, what excites you about this profession, about getting into IT?
Being my own hero whenever my computer is acting up. Being able to be like, oh, I think I know what's going on here. And just having that deeper knowledge of what makes something I use so often ticks. You know what I mean? I feel
Okay.
we don't really respect a lot of the gadgets and the technology we use. We just expect it to always work. And when it doesn't work, everybody kind of, loses themselves a little bit. So I would love, what excites me about it is being able to be a part of a team where people are panicking. I'm just like, it's all right, guys, I got it. Just give me a few moments,
Okay. Be able to help people
Yes.
in their most desperate moments in their career. All right, Candido, what excites you about this particular profession, sir?
One thing that excites me about this profession is that I could protect myself from hackers. You know what I'm saying? I could protect other people from hackers. I could have a more secure network in my home and not be so vulnerable to outside interference and people who are up to no good. Because I've experienced a lot of phone tapping and computer hacking and stuff like that. I've been a victim of that. So that's one of the
Okay.
reasons. That's one of the things that excites me. I could protect myself from that.
Being more secure in your daily life.
Yes.
I think the statistic is the average person has their data stolen 1 to 2 times a year at least.
Yeah.
Like all their personal data is stolen about 1 to 2 times a year. So I mean that's pretty significant when you consider, it's about, was it like 330 million people in the US, like 260 are adults. So there's I think roughly about 600 million data breaches a year. So yeah, makes sense. All right. What makes you nervous about this profession? Jessica.
Oh, go ahead.
Steven? Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, Steven.
To be honest, I'm not nervous at all. I'm really excited about getting into the field. Like, anything that would make me nervous is not knowing everything right away, not being really green.
Okay. Well, I mean, be comfortable in that fact, because I will guarantee you the more you learn in this profession, the more questions you will have. The more I dove into security, the more I dove into networking, stuff like that, the more it's one of those, the more I realized I didn't know. So I was learning more and realizing how much more there was to learn. So that's why I usually lead with, if somebody tells you they know everything with regards to IT, they are lying to you, because it's near impossible to be able to know all that stuff. That's why people specialize in different fields. That may have been something that was possible back in the 80s, that you could know almost everything about IT, but now how rapidly it's developing and how broad it has become, it is near impossible. So, Cynthia.
I think, oh, sorry. I think the uncertainty of the fact that, especially in security, that you're always going to be vulnerable, no matter how good you are as a cybersecurity person. There's always going to be a hack. And because America is like, what is it, like 3 million jobs down in cybersecurity. And we have countries like Israel that has like armies of people in cybersecurity. We're like sitting ducks. And I think the nervousness, or it's not really so much the nervousness, but the uncertainty that we don't really have a really strong defense, let alone offense in our own America. That's what kind of makes me nervous.
And, you know, to kind of compound on top of that, you said we're down 3 million jobs in cybersecurity, right? What about the fact that most companies refuse to consider, talk about, or even implement cybersecurity until there's a major incident?
Exactly.
So that's on top of those 3 million jobs that are already not fulfilled. So you have because companies don't want to pay for it. Cybersecurity pays well. If you know what you're doing, it pays well, but a lot of companies don't want to put forward that money. So they're like, oh, we're okay until there's a major incident. And then they invest in cybersecurity, because if it happens again, then they become extremely liable.
And that's actually the scary part, that something has to happen in order for security to happen. Meanwhile, there should be already preventative measures in place, even whether you're a small, medium, or a big company, especially that big companies can afford cybersecurity professionals or a team. Even whether you're a small or medium-sized company, that should be one of the thoughts in budget, that, hey, let me get a team to prevent these things from happening. And when small business or medium-sized companies do that and get that word out there more often, they'll probably be more, to me, I believe, ahead of the curve, because you can foresee these things to come. You know, like if you have a good triage, your company has a better, a time to recover, what God forbid any losses, but prevent those things from happening, because hackers are predictable. It's not like it's, not a predictable thing.
That is true. But I mean, and unfortunately, I mean, the tides are starting to change on this, because people are starting to really realize the impact that a hack system can have, and that IT in general has. I mean, for the last few decades, IT would have to fight tooth and nail just to justify the basic budget they did have, in order to do the bare minimum that they needed to do to keep the company running, to make sure that everything is secure, all that kind of fun stuff. So absolutely. So, I mean, for me, when I was entering the cohort, what made me nervous was just how much I didn't know. I mean, not gonna lie, when I got handed this book on day one, that's a lot. That's a lot of reading. It's a lot of stuff. We got to know all of this, or are we just doing individual chapters? No, you're reading the whole book, and it seems like a lot, but we're breaking it up over the course of 3 months.
It's like being a doctor, right? It's like you're being trained, to go into this really, to me, I think IT is, I compare it to like being a pre-med student. Like once you get trained and then you go into an internship where you specialize in your field, and then you go off and do what you're supposed to do. So just looking at that book, I'm like, yikes, it just reminds me of that.
Yeah, I think I actually had the Grey's Anatomy book right up there. The sad part is it's only slightly thicker than this book. So, which is the main anatomy book for med school.
I have mine right here.
Yep. It's a thick one, that's for sure. So that was the thing for me, was just, looking at it, it just seemed really daunting. It's like, okay, well, I got to cover that in 3 months and become proficient and be able to execute and talk about it intelligently and get through this stuff. And it just seemed like a whole lot. And then, when you start getting in the struggle, so to speak, where you're reading every day, you're doing your study sessions, you're working with your study groups. And then before you know it, class is 3/4 over, you've read through the whole book, and now your entire language has changed in how you're, discussing this with your teammates. You're no longer sitting there going like, oh, what's that thing that, you're like, yeah, it was, these symptoms we're seeing right here, where, we put in the website and we can't get to it and all that stuff, but, we could put in the IP address and we go right there. Okay, well, then that's probably something like DNS poisoning. So you start to realize that there's these little things that will lead you to the correct paths, and your language surrounding it becomes much more efficient. You don't need to be an expert when you get into IT, but we need to be able to understand the basics of IT. You essentially, when you first get started, you're going to become an expert Googler, is what it comes down to. I'm fluent in Google. And the biggest part about Google is how you search for things and the terms that you use to search for these things. If you put in a generic term like, I can't get on the internet, you're going to get 10 million different results, all pointing you in various different directions. Is it plugged in? Is your computer even on? And it could go from extremely simple to extremely complex, where in IT, you're looking at the symptoms that happen to be the problem. And then you're like, okay, can't connect to my DHCP server.
What does that mean? Right.
So then you'll get back, a couple hundred responses, some of them forums, but they're going to be a lot more targeted exactly to what you need. So you're going to be a lot more efficient in being able to troubleshoot issues than the average layman. So when you have better understanding, you'll be able to troubleshoot these problems, and you actually will have kind of a method of operation where initially you start with your internal knowledge, then you go to the company's knowledge reservoirs, which might be their internal systems, then you go to your teammates, and then then you go out, yourself, internal systems, then external research like Google forums and stuff like that, then your teammates, and then finally, after you've exhausted all that, then you will go to your supervisor.
Escalate. All right.
So knowing how to escalate your search parameters, and you have to do this relatively efficiently, because you don't, when you call an IT, you don't want them spending 5-10 minutes on each one, right? You want them to escalate through that problem as quickly as possible to get you to the solution so that you can get on with your day. And we now have to translate that to our customers. So, questions so far? All right. Real quick.
I'm sorry, I had a quick question, Kelly.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you. Not to sound just so wet behind the ears, but I always wondered, what does a day of an IT person look like? Because other than when you are a man down and they come out the cave, you don't see them. So
I'm glad you asked that question. That is an absolutely excellent question.
What exactly, like, am I going to be am I going to be about world, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, do you usually have a colleague to help you? Are you sometimes, should you not be surprised if you're you're all of IT, or is it, you're just curious, what are we going to be doing all day?
Well, later in this presentation, we're going to get into the typical day of IT service support. So great question. We're actually going to be covering that later in the presentation. Now, with regards to whether or not you'll have a team or work individually or what have you, that's going to depend on the company you work for, honestly. If you work for small to mid-sized companies, you may be the sole IT person for that entire organization. You may have to wear a lot of hats. Like, you may have to be the network guy, the email guy, the cloud person, security. I mean, you may have to be all of those things at once, and you may not be an expert at any individual one of those, but you may have a pretty good knowledge in a lot of them. So that may be the case if you're working for small to mid-sized organizations, like, especially if, there are cases where people, like, you have IT professionals where they're a single IT person working for 10 different companies. So you have 10 different small entrepreneurial businesses that may have 1 to 10 people. They can't afford to have a full-time IT person. So they may have you come in and just, set up workstations, establish email protocols, set up the domains, and they'll just pay you on a,
Gotcha.
ad hoc basis to come in and do particular things. So we have a guy who was in my cohort out of NOLA. That's what he does. He works for like 10 or 15 different companies, and they're just small companies, and he just helps set up and manage their IT needs. That's it.
Cool.
If it's a big organization with 5,000-10,000 employees, you may have an army of IT people. You may have like 15 or 20 of you, and you're specializing in different areas. Like one person may do phones, one person may do networking, one person may do hardware, one person may do security. So, or you may be in small groups, working on that. You may have half the team does desktop support, other half does network and other things. I mean, it's depending upon the organization's needs, how you will organize it, how many IT professionals there will be.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Did you have a question, Glenn? Okay. All right.
No, I didn't have a question. I was going to answer the question of what a daily activity of an IT guy is, and that's why I raised my hand up. It's like, oh, I got the answer to that. But I said that you were going to cover it, so never mind.
Okay. All right.
Got a question, Kelly Candido?
Nah, that was actually
Okay, you good? All right.
I didn't need to raise my hand.
Okay.
All right, everyday learner, so many new technologies, softwares, and programming languages coming up daily. Yes, that is true. Knowledge of storing, retrieving, and sending information or electronic data. Future technology is evolving daily, and it will only keep getting better. Good. Okay. Use of any computers, storage, networking, and other physical devices, being able to understand the ins and outs of computer systems in order to solve any issues. All right, that's a pretty good one. Information T means to use the use of technology and the internet to store, process data into useful information.
Did you have another question, Candido?
Yeah, are we supposed to be writing something or answering the questions on the
Yes.
screen or no?
Yes,
There
that's
should be a
why.
question on your screen in your Nearpod. Should be you should be able to type in an answer.
Okay, what does okay.
And a lot of times in the course, you may get into the rut of thinking that IT is just help desk or service support, when it is such a broad and so many different facets within this particular environment. You can pretty much, as we stated last week, you can kind of dive into almost anything. Almost any profession nowadays is heavily invested into IT, even farming.
Yeah.
Farming, extremely heavy into IT. Most of the tractors that are run out there, the guys, they're not driving them. They're actually geo-fenced around the property, and the tractors just run on their own and pretty much do the whole thing. And it involves a lot of IT in that. Running cattle, they use drones now. Instead of dogs or guys on horses, they'll use drones to herd cows and sheep and all that stuff into the pens they need to be. They can also, they'll hire IT people to fly drones over over the crops, and by flying over the crops, you can tell by the coloration of the crops themselves. If there is nutrient deficiencies in the soil, if you're having pest problems, and various things like that. So, even in, out in the boonies, in farm country, IT is heavily, involved in these aspects. In order to feed 300 million people, you can't just have, small mom and pop farms. There has to be large mega farms that has to be able to do this. In order to be able to run these things, you need technology to assist. So many people weren't aware of that. I mean, it's pretty entertaining if you see them actually use the drones to herd cattle or sheep and stuff like that, and get them into the pens or get them out into the pastures and stuff like that. It's much more efficient than trying to use dogs and horses or guys on four-wheelers and stuff like that. They can all do that from the comfort of their house. They don't even have to leave. They can just, fly the drone out, push the cattle wherever they need to be, and they're good to go.
Yeah, it's really IT has really become big too because of the pandemic. We weren't all able to meet face to face, so everything had to be done over Zoom or some other medium. So all of that, that they needed people to be able to make that accessible as well to everyone.
Yeah.
So there are lots of different aspects.
And the idea of virtual teams is becoming a lot more commonplace, where it used to be very, very specific niche fields. Now, just in the aspect of instruction, we have a virtual team running right here. I'm in Florida, Mark's in Georgia, and Avery is in Tennessee. And we all operate as if we're essentially sitting in the same room together.
Cynthia?
Yeah, it also actually makes me think about the actual virtual environment. We're now so comfortable like seeing each other via camera. Now it's going to be like offshoots of like virtual rooms where it's like a cartoon, like an avatar that looks like you, and that's your representative in that environment. That's what I see in the future.
You're reading
So
about Meta.
instead of VTubers, you'll have your virtual representation for the office.
Yeah. Meta. Facebook Meta, here we go.
Oh, that'll be terrible, because then people have zero reason to get up and put their pants on in the morning. They just come out in their robes with their coffee and ready to go.
Lorraine?
You're on mute, man.
You're muted.
Hold on. You're on mute. 1 second.
Sorry about that.
Okay, there we go.
I think at this point, it might be appropriate to remember that the marvels of technology do allow us to do things that may be more efficient and have replaced other options that may be outdated or the pandemic necessitated that we change.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent with children in remote school, I know every day what that means. Because I caution my kids every day, as efficient and as world shaking and different this is, I think we have to keep in mind that virtual can't replace everything. The human contact is so important. Yeah, we may not be able to touch and hug, but I think there's other ways of doing that. And I think it's important because when we keep that in mind, it makes us better troubleshooters. It makes us more accessible and accountable to our clients. And I think it helps us remember that when we're doing our business, as trained as we may be, we are still serving the customer. The customer is always foremost, and accountability is, I think, better addressed if we remember that it is one-on-one, and that even though we're on a camera, we can't hide behind it. We have to be present.
Absolutely. Makes sense. I mean, but think of it as, to a degree, the virtual allows you to take part in things that you may not necessarily have been able to before. If you're the type of person that does not want to be in, say, New York City, you don't want to live in a small apartment that costs you an arm and a leg. just to have an opportunity to work for a certain industry. You can now work in a more rural area, in a smaller community, if that's something that you are more drawn to. If you want to live in a smaller town, in a smaller community, you can still take part in those companies or careers without necessarily having to be there. So it allows for a greater pool to utilize their skills and not necessarily be geographically bound to a certain area. So if, say, my wife gets an opportunity and that opportunity is, you know, in Colorado, or it's in Arizona or New Jersey or what have you, I can still go. You know, we don't have to debate whether or not I'm giving up my career in order for her to pursue hers. She can pursue hers and I can continue to do mine. So, I mean, there is areas of opportunity, but yes, we don't need to, we need to make sure we don't lose that human or personal touch in the process. So. Was Gamer the one with Gerard Butler?
Yeah, Gerard Butler.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Ready Player One was a great one. That was eerily turning out to be prophetic. So I'm kind of worried about that. Like they were actually, you know, they had the, you know, the guy who lived, you know, they lived in like mobile homes that were stacked on top of each other, and they called them the stacks. And then now in places, I think like we had somebody here who's from St. Louis, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, they're taking shipping containers and stacking them on top of each other to create low cost housing. And I'm like, did they read that book and get that idea from there? Or, you know, so, you know, sometimes art imitates life and life imitates art. So hard to tell where one ends and one begins. All right, good questions.
Cynthia, Cynthia, did you have another question?
Well, it's more like, I want to just add on to what Kelly said. It's really important, no matter how technologically advanced we get as a society or just as professionals, is to have that human contact, because and of course you guys already understand this, like we're literally like cyborgs, literally. Like our phones are connected to us, our laptops are connected to us. So we as techs, especially from the most, like no matter how good we get, we don't lose the foundation that we're building right now as human based as possible. You know, I think that the new hybrid that's coming into IT should carry that over, meaning no matter how good and intelligent or sophisticated or genius we get at our field, that we always keep that human quality to our work. Because the more synthetic we get, the more we'll lose, quote unquote, that interaction, like if that person was physically there. But if you're really good, you as a person, that can convey through whether it's artificial, virtual, or even camera work. I think that's a skill that if you can develop as an IT professional right now, it could make you stand out to other companies by far.
Agreed. Although I can't take credit for that. It was Lorraine that was actually reminding us that we should maintain that the human part, the human connection.
Yes. Yeah.
So. All right. So here is your basic definition of IT, which is information or IT is the field of computers in their entirety, their operation and their maintenance. So you could be a scripter, you could be somebody who works in service support, you could be an app developer, you could be a network specialist, you could be a cloud specialist, you could be a security specialist. There's like hundreds, if not thousands of different careers you can step into and still technically be considered IT. So it is a very, very broad field where you can really let your interests guide you. I think, Candido, weren't you talking about you got into it mostly for music? You had a lot of music, like music equipment that you utilize initially. Isn't that what you were saying before?
It's pro recording.
Okay.
It's like, you know, back in the days they used to have to cut like tape and stuff like that, and they used to have big machines and everything was analog.
Mhm.
They used to have big boards and stuff like that. But all of that over time turned into softwares. Everything that that the people are using nowadays to create music is on softwares. Is programs
MIDI
that are
mixers
created.
and stuff like that.
It's created out of zeros and ones. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So if you're really big into music, that's definitely, very, very heavily technology based field. What was it with auto tuning? Everybody can blame Cher for the, if you believe in love, whatever, that single song ruined the music industry forever. Because now you don't even need to know how to sing. You can use auto tuning to correct anything that goes wrong.
Right.
But
then,
yeah.
last thing is as time goes by, there's always updates, and depending on what operating system you're using, that always makes a difference on like what's going to be compatible with what, and it's all based on, and it's all computerized.
Well, and as we'll learn going along, and as many of you have probably experienced at least once in your life, you run that update, bad things can happen. Apps that you need to use every day all of a sudden don't work anymore.
I'm still running on 10.6.8.
There you go.
On my Mac. That's on Snow Leopard, and they all the way up to like, I don't know what they're up to right now, but if I update, I'm not going to be able to use a lot of the programs that I use right now.
Wow.
I'm still working off Windows 3.1. Somebody else was speaking? I didn't hear.
Mac OS is now up to Monterey. It's called now Monterey for the software.
What's the number? 10? Is it what is it? 13 point something? 14 point something?
And does anybody remember the major controversy with the new updates that they were pushing?
No.
Did you hear that?
No, we didn't hear you.
Muted. Still muted.
You're muted
Still
again.
muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's version 12.0.1.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Susan dropped it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the most recent updates with regards to Apple that was causing a whole lot of controversy was the ability to search through your photo albums. Their moderators be able to go through your photos whenever they so choose to look for undesirable material. And they use, of course, they always do, is the think of the children approach to this, like, oh, we're just going after these types of people. And it's like, yeah, but you're opening the door to a lot of abuse.
Yep.
So there was a lot of controversy. Yes, they said that we're like, oh, we're only going to be looking at the metadata. Unfortunately, especially if, in security and stuff like that, you don't necessarily want to open doors to things like that whenever possible, because it is and has been consistently been proven to be abused over and over and over again when they set up something like that. So it was basically anything that you stored in the cloud photographically, they would have access to. So I think they backed off on that. We'll have to see when the next rollout comes. So yeah, they did admit to slowing down older devices, so you would upgrade. They said it was so that they could, so the older devices could compensate. They didn't want to overdrain the battery, and they could compensate by slowing your phone down so that it would give you longer life. But no, it's not a planned obsolescence is a thing where an update comes out and all of a sudden your phone's half as fast as it used to be. But they did get slapped pretty hard with fines on that one, but it doesn't seem like it's slowing them or other phone developers down in the process on that.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
guys, think about it. AT&T and some of your other service providers are doing the same thing.
Yep.
They're slowing your data down. They're trying to push everybody to fiber. So they won't have to manage two different
Networks at once.
networks. Yes. So think about that as well.
They keep asking me if I want fiber. I told them yes, but they don't run it here. Like in my neighborhood, I am unfortunately forced to have to use Comcast, who I loathe, but I have to use them because AT&T, all they offer is 3. If I buy their super ultimate fast upgraded network, I get 3.4 megs a second,
Turtle
which
speed.
means I would not be here today.
No bandwidth.
Exactly. All right. So real quick, we're going to take a little 10-minute break. Just stretch your legs, get a drink, use the restroom, what have you. We'll meet back here at 10:20 and we'll continue. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording here. There we go. Facts from the Bureau of Labor Statistics from 2016. So these statistics that we're going to be showing you are from a few years ago. Things have obviously changed in the world with regards to, you know, how we operate. And COVID, IT has become a much more in-demand field in the last 18 months, as well as rapidly becoming a more lucrative field to be in the last 18 months, just because of high demand, low supply. So looking like back then, they were looking at adding 500,000 new jobs. It's looking significantly higher than that right about now. Up into about 2024, we're seeing rapid spikes in the IT field. Median annual wage for computer and IT occupations is roughly $82.8 thousand a year. And that was as of May 2016. This has only gone up. If you, for instance, get into cloud computing, like you get your AWS certification, you do your internship, you get about 6-8 months a year under your belt, you take the next certification, I think it's practitioner. On top of that, you're looking at easily a 6-figure entry salary. You know, and a lot of that is remote work for companies. So these numbers are a little bit outdated. Not to say that your entry level positions for IT support, stuff like that, very well could be in the 30,000 to 40,000 range. It kind of gets you started. Doesn't mean you'll be there long, because depending on your skill level, your gusto to which you approach your job and things like that, you could rapidly advance in the field in pretty short order. Some people may just like the ease of operating on help desk. I got a flexible schedule, I work from home, you know, it's not too overly stressful, and I can live off this. So some people like being at that range, and that's where they want to be, and that's where they'll want to stay. That's perfectly cool too. The thing is it is heavily on you what you want to do. Do you want to be the person who wants to get in there and then just keep attacking it and growing and developing and learning and moving up through the ranks? That can be just as easily be you as well. All right. Entry-level careers in IT. User support technician, also called service specialist, help desk, comes with a lot of, you know, various names. Typically it's tier 1. Entry level is where you would start. Typically 3-4 years ago, $12 to $18 an hour. Now it's probably closer to 15 to 22 would be your starting entry levels with regards to help desk. Understand that employers are not blind to the fact that there's a heavy desire to work from home. So there are many cases where if you get the opportunity to work remotely, you may actually make less money than if you physically went into the office. So bear that in mind. Sometimes with that convenience comes a cost in the salary, but bear in mind, you won't be paying for commute. You won't be paying for lunches. And not necessarily, you may not necessarily have to pay for the wardrobe to be working at an office on site. So cost benefit, where do you want to be? And what that company has to offer. So that would be support technician, and coming out with an A+, likely if you go into a tier 1 position and you have those skills, you likely won't be in tier 1 very long. And there are also ways to where you can kind of accelerate that, your way into tier 2 and tier 3, where the paychecks do get bigger, but so do the headaches with regards to troubleshooting, and the problems you'll be asked to solve become significantly more complicated. And some of you are coming in with IT experience and are just looking for that certification to kind of say, yes, for sure, I know this information. Here's a certification to back it up. Your experience coupled with the certification will already push you into the tier 2, tier 3 levels. All right. Sorry. So here's just one example of a way you can work within it. Say coming in, you already were working in front office in the medical field, or you were nursing or something like that. You may want to stay in the same field you're in, just in a different aspect of it. So you may get into medical records and health IT technicians. My previous partner, Marvin, who worked with me for about a year, his dream job was to get back into the medical field of IT. And he did IT on X-ray machines and a couple other things prior to stepping into the program. And he really wanted to get back into it because if you'll probably, hear from him when he comes in, he'll talk to the class here a little bit. He is heavily driven by a desire to help people. It's just his personality. It's who he is. He's a very, very warm person. And so working in the medical field where you can help people, it's just job satisfaction is very high in that. So that was the field he went towards. And so he already had prior experience. He now has certifications. He's working towards others. And finally, an opening came up that fit him. And he went ahead and he took it. Now, the expected salary is going to be higher than that at this point, especially with regards to medical IT. I'd say you're probably looking into the 60s, high 50s, 60s, up into the 70s, and that's entry in medical IT. So if that is, what you want to, go into, that's what you can go into. And you can leverage your previous experience. Like my previous experience, I spent 15 years in logistics, working with supply chains, drivers, trains, ships, cargo ships, stuff like that. If I went into IT with that, I would have a great understanding as to what the day-to-day operations look like on the other side. And that will help me with triaging problems. I will know right off the bat what is a critical system that needs to go up versus what's something that could possibly wait. So having that insight can make you more valuable when you carry that over into the IT field, because you know what the operational side does. If your previous career is not something you thoroughly enjoyed, you don't have to stick to it. You can jump to something else. That's the beauty of IT. It kind of goes into anywhere. If you're working for a company and they say, here's a non-compete, you can't work for any other healthcare company within the, within a 75-mile radius, you can go, okay, fine. I'll work in transportation. I'm good to go. That's the beauty of IT. We can jump into, maneuver, and specialize however we see fit. But a lot of that is heavily, heavily weighted on our ability to adapt and learn as we go. because with every new organization you go to, especially if it's mid to large organizations, you're going to have to learn new systems, new ways of troubleshooting, repairing, and fixing those systems, because everybody kind of has their own in-house stuff. Not everybody will buy from Apple or Microsoft or Google or whatever. Some may build their own from scratch in-house, and you have to be able to adapt and grow to that and learn how to fix those systems. One of the big ones in transportation was something called AS400. It looks like a really bad DOS system, but it's extremely functional within logistics. There was a guy in my cohort who actually was one of the original programmers on AS400. So it was kind of interesting running into somebody who built the system that I'd learned to loathe over the last 15 years that had actually had a hand in creating it. So, you know, but we have to be able to shift and adapt. If you're able to do that, you'll become extremely valuable, and you can go as far as your skills will take you. So all right, job versus a career path. Does anybody want us to tell what's the difference? What's the difference between a job versus a career? Steven.
A job is like working to just get a paycheck, and a career is actually doing something you actually like doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else on that one? Rachel.
And it's just a vocation, and the other is an application.
Okay. Like it. Anita.
So I feel like a job is just like a job without any intentions on like advancing and, you know, being promoted and like going up and like rank, you know what I'm saying? And it's usually like a little more than longevity. A job could be longevity or temporary, but a job kind of like you kind of stay stuck doing whatever, like you kind of like confined to like to like whatever your job may be. But I mean, I guess a career, you know, there's constant changes and elevation and whatever field it is that you're in. That's just what I think.
Okay. I like it. We'll do two more real quick, Mark, and then I'll get to Leela.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, like Candido said. So I think it's like, for me, it's a mindset. I don't know what the actual definition is. I've never taken the time to look it up. So to me, it's a mindset. A job, I'm just going there to make some cash. You know, I don't see a future there. You know, when you go on an interview and they ask you, you know, why do you want to be here? You make up some reason. You just need a check. The real reason is I want some money. You know, it's not because, you know, I always dreamed about being a server since I was a little boy. No.
Because if you didn't, you just volunteer, right?
Exactly. So, but a career, I would say, like, it's a mindset. So like, you know what I've always been passionate about, say, is IT, tech. When I was a little kid, I used to take apart my radio or take apart my TV. So it's more of a mindset, like, this is what I want to do. This is what I was born to do. And I'm really passionate about it. So to me, that's the difference.
Okay. Fair
I
point.
I like that. Same here.
All right. Leela?
Melinda, that's a great response. I like that. Leela.
I think a job can be anything that leads to your career path.
Okay.
So if I want to be let's say an IT manager, that could be towards my career path, but just to be an IT support specialist, that's my job. And it's just leading me down my path for my career. That's
So kind of, so I sorry to interrupt. So I'm just saying, if I understand you correctly, so what are you saying, that a job is what you're doing right now?
Right.
What you do in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The career path is where you see that going.
Right.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. Yeah. That's actually the way I view it. So very, very cool. I'll do one more this time.
Yeah, I think a job is for money, but career for that one to you do very well experience and for education and for the past. and you go into a big career for a long term. You be to
Okay.
experience it.
I like it. So kind of like what Leela was saying, my view of it has always been the job is what I'm doing right now. The career path is where do I see myself going? Where do I want to be? We need to start looking in terms of 5 years, 10 years down the road and finding those paths that we want to be on. Do you want to be a system administrator? Do you want to be a programmer? Do you want to be a scripter? Do you want to be an app developer? You know, do you want to be, you know, an IT consultant, program manager? What we need to do is figure out what aspect of IT interests us, who holds those jobs right now, how did they get to those jobs? And the job I'm doing right now, how is that going to help me get there? If it's not going to help me get to where I want to be or where I feel I need to be, then I need to find a way to get into a job that will put me on that career path. Because if I'm just spinning my wheels here, like, well, it's just a job, it pays the bills, you know, then the opportunities to get onto that career path may not come. Like one of the big things with logistics is once you get in, it's hard to get out of logistics because it is so specialized. And almost anything, when you step out of it, you literally have to go down to zero and then build yourself back up. And the longer you're in that career path and the further you move along it, the harder that becomes because you don't want to take 60, 80, 90% pay cut just to go down to zero to start on another career path that you may enjoy more or that you want to go on. So look at where you want to go, look where you're at now, and determine whether or not the job you're in now is going to get you where you want to go. If it's not going to get you where you want to go, start looking for one that will. You know, the truth about IT, the first job you get in IT is going to be the hardest one to acquire because you don't have proven skills yet. You got a certification, which proves you have good understanding because we're all here, we're all walking away with a certification, right? Otherwise, why are we here? You know, some of us may be walking away with 2 or 3 certifications. So, we need to look where we want to go. We need to find out if where we're at is going to get us there. If it's not going to get us there, what are we doing here now? We need to move to a position where we can get to that career path that we want. Sometimes you stumble into one you didn't know you would like. I never saw myself as a teacher. I never saw myself as instructing other people. I am a bit of an introvert. I don't like public speaking. I kind of saw myself just getting into IT. Why? Because, you know, when you're in IT, you don't work with people. At least I thought that until I started getting into IT. Then I realized, no, you are working with people all the time. But I just never saw myself as a teacher. My old partner, Marvin, he didn't see himself as a teacher. Avery was a teacher. So, you know, he was trying to get out. We had to drag him back in. But it was just one of those things that I kind of stumbled across it. And I'm not going to lie, it's been one of the highest job satisfactions I've ever had in my life. You know, do I see myself here 5, 10 years from now? Not sure. I really do want to get into cybersecurity. That is my dream, is to dive into that. I find it fascinating. I love reading about it, learning about it. But for right now, I love what I do right here. You know, so you may stumble into things that for the moment, like, you know what? I may spend 6, 8 months here for a year because some of the skills I'll develop here can carry over to other things. Like while I'm here, I'm learning project management. I'm learning public speaking skills. I'm learning to, you know, work with and lead teams. These are great aspects that I can carry over into other aspects of IT. So it doesn't mean if it's not directly on that path, completely ignore it because there might be value added that you can gain from it. But if you're in a job 1, 2, 3 years, it's not progressing, it's not on the right path, start looking for ways to get where you need to go. So, all right. Now, Another question we have is, how might having a strong future orientation, looking towards the future mindset, help you to be more successful on your career path? Anybody? No? All right, Jessica.
When I hear job versus career, I kind of think the job is something, so it becomes second nature, where it's like it's robotic. Where with a career, it's more fluid, it's more interactive. You're growing along with it in your career. So having a strong future orientation mindset, I think it's going to help you be successful for your career path, because anything of value is going to come with some weight, some work. So I feel like it helps, that mindset is going to help you know, hey, this is not just the average job you're going for. This is a career. So you can't go at it as you would normally, all casual. You want to, level up, step your game up, and you want to address it as such, a career, where you just got to boss up that much more. Because again, you're not going for just a job, you're going for a career, which is more of a long-term commitment. And I think we're all at the age point where we know we want to invest our time wisely. So we want to make sure whatever we're committed to, it's also committed to us to a certain, to a worthy degree. So with that focus, it's like time to plant your feet.
I like it.
Thank you.
DW.
I completely agree with what Jessica said. So having a strong future orientation is, not only going to help you guide yourself towards, on your career path, but it's, it's also going to keep you grounded as well, right? Because you're going to have that vision, and for every step that you follow through on that vision, it's just going to, lead you closer and closer to your end goal, or and it's also going to bring you that personal satisfaction and make you happy at whatever you're doing. So if you don't have a strong, or a strong vision of what your future is, then your career path is probably not set is not set in the right way right now.
Okay, well said. All right, we'll do one more, and we got to kind of push on because we are tracking a little bit behind, but not too bad. I'm gonna go with Julian.
Basically, I agree with what other people said. Basically, having a strong future orientation draws a more direct path to getting where you want to be. An easier path because you know what you want and what you have to do.
Okay.
So I believe that's what helps you be more successful in the long run.
All right, I like it. All right, just to answer a quick question, Jerusalem asked me, did I get into cybersecurity in a college field, or cybersecurity field in a college setting? The answer is no. It was like a year ago, January of 2020 is when I got into generation. I had zero IT experience prior. And then I got my A+ while I was in the course. I dove into Network Plus afterwards on self-study. And then on self-study, I also continued on to Security Plus and cybersecurity analysis. So to a degree, in the cybersecurity field, I am mostly self-taught and kind of continuing my journey on that. So. All right. Well said, Solomon. It's our future orientation that determining our career path. It's like having a picture of the future. How do you know if you're successful if you don't know where you want to go?
Yep.
If you don't have an idea of where you're going, how do you know when you get there? And if you get there really quickly, what's the next step? How are you going to challenge yourself again? All right, so here's kind of what we were talking about. Career path, kind of find that role. that you want to fill in your career path? Like, what is it you're wanting to, I mean, we all know why we're here. We're here to get our certifications and learn about IT, but this is just step one. This is our starting point. Where do we want to go? We'll drop a document in the chat here in a little bit that'll look something like this. And want you to kind of look for the career path that you're the end job you're looking for 5 years, 10 years from now. What is it you're trying to achieve? That would be your advancement. Do you want to be an IT manager? Do you want to be a consultant? Do you want to be, you know, a web developer? Things like that. Find that career that you are looking for and then work backwards to it. You know, what credentials are required? Some of them may require a degree. Some of them may say, as is most, degree and or equivalent experience. Some of them may be hard and fast on certifications you need. You may need your A+, you may need your Network Plus, you may need your CCNA, you may need your CISP. You know, depending on what you're wanting to get into, there may be required certifications, but we want to look into that now so you can start planning on working towards those goals. What does the entry level look like in that field? And those are going to be the jobs you're going to be looking for when we start getting closer to the end of this course. to try to step into these fields, you need to start looking into the entry levels for those fields. What does the mid-tier look like? You know, once you get some relative experience, what's the next step up? And then your overall advanced goal that you wish to achieve. So it'll just be an exercise. I think it might be in Canvas. And if not, we'll drop it in the link. But just start thinking about the path you want to be on, how we're going to get there. Here's a couple, you know, different career paths that you can use. It's extremely diverse depending on what interests you, how you wish to pursue it. You know, are you going to need to learn C++? You're going to need to learn Python. Are you going to need to learn Linux? Are you going to need to learn Perl, Java, SQL? I mean, there's a ton of different stuff out there that you can get involved in. What is it you're going to need to get where you want to get? Obviously, the most tools you have in your toolbox at your disposal, the more valuable you become. But they also need to be geared towards what you want to be or where you want to end up. All right. So, middle skill roles. You could have, it says Microsoft certified in here, which is kind of funny because they nuked almost all their certifications with the exception of Azure. So that would be more cloud oriented, which is where most things are going. You have your AWS certifications, Azure, they all have a laundry list of sub-certs that you can get under those umbrellas. If you wish, Cisco certifications, the entry level on that is the CCNA, which I believe somebody just mentioned in chat. But that's a good one to start. It is similar to having your Network Plus, but it is more heavily focused on the Cisco systems and will get you involved in the Cisco command lines and things like that. All right. Baseline skills, get you in there. If you want to move up in your field, soft skills are going to play a major role. And if it's coming down between you and one other person who have equivalent IT skills, or even if your skills are a little bit less than theirs, if you have really good people skills, if you have those soft skills, if you can lead a team, you're exponentially more valuable than somebody who is not good at working with people, generally doesn't play well with others, is rude to customers, but they're really, really good at the, troubleshooting and taking care of things. And the manager's like, okay, well, you're basically kept here because you're skilled, but the likelihood of you moving up in the company is going to be extremely low. But if you have those soft skills, if you are able to work with others and unify a team, inspire a team, utilize the common knowledge of the team, even if you are not necessarily the most skilled in the tech, in the tech part of it, they may encourage or pull you along because the person will likely want to mentor you more. All right, here's the document we were talking about, but we will drop that in chat. I believe it also is in Canvas, so it'll be there too. Grad school versus certifications depends on the field you're going into and what they value, because different companies value those things differently. I wouldn't deter somebody from getting a degree, but especially in the IT field, they're looking for the skills. If you have the skills, you will always be valuable. That doesn't mean you won't learn those skills in the college setting. So it's kind of one of those 6 1, half dozen the other. I know for bachelors and stuff in career science, a lot of times they're walking out with their trifecta certs, their A+, Net Plus, Security Plus. They have all those wrapped up, maybe a CCNA on there. But you can also pursue those on your own. And then if you gain equivalent experience, they may overlook the degree portion of it. All right. Now we can bypass that one real quick. All right, day in the life of an IT professional. I believe this question did come up earlier today, so I guess we will dive into it now. So what does the average day look like? What are you going to be doing if you're in a help desk position? What does it look like? I know we have some IT professionals in here. I know Glean works in IT, and he has had a little bit of experience, you might say, working with customers and helping solve their issues. So, you know, we will dive into this here just a little bit. There are 4 main aspects when you're working, especially in a help desk situation, that your life will revolve around. First is triage tickets. I love that word, triage. Anybody tell me what they think, or, you know, where they've heard the word triage and what exactly it means to you? So what does triage mean, Candido?
Like when you go in the emergency room or appointment, the triage of people that affect your blood pressure and things like that. So I'm assuming that the triage part, when it comes to IT, is the issue being diagnosed, like what's wrong, his like
okay.
Whatever's on the ticket is going to be what's assumed to be I guess the issue at hand.
Okay, we're knocking on the right door.
That makes sense. I don't know.
We're knocking on the right door. Ronald, what do you think? Triage.
I'd say triage would be like when there's something that's like emergency, like any kind of ticket that's like very important for the now, that supersedes any other tickets you had prior to that, like if it's something that's minor.
Okay, knocking a little harder on that door. DW.
Yeah, I think Ronald was getting onto it. To me, when I think of triage in an IT setting, I'm thinking prioritizing, you know.
That's what I'm looking for.
And also looking for certain symptoms, right? So like, yeah, you know, like Candido said about going into the nurse's office. Yeah, if you come in with high blood pressure or you have chest pain, you know, the guy with high blood pressure, they're probably going to sit you down before, and then, you know, until the doctor sees the guy who's having a heart attack.
Yeah. So prioritization, that is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. So triage, most people think of it in terms of like medical or militaries, like if you have a corpsman or something like that with regards to the medical field. You know, you want to prioritize people coming in to make sure you're taking care of the greatest emergencies first. You know, if somebody can't access their emails, that is important as an entire server going down and accounts receivable not able to like the entire accounts receivable department going down. Which one is more important? These are extreme examples, but obviously the person who can't reach their email can wait a little bit, while the person who, the group of people that is a business critical function is down, needs to be taken care of first. Well, let's throw another monkey wrench in there. What if the person whose email is down is the CEO and he's trying to get a presentation off of his email so that because he has to meet with the board of directors in 15 minutes. Now, which one's more important? It's a single email versus an entire department. Well, I guess it would depend on your CEO, which one they would determine. He may say, okay, I understand business critical functions need to get up first. The other one may say, you know what, if you don't get in here right now, you won't have a job in 5 minutes. So, you need to look at these problems holistically, be able to prioritize what is the most important, what can wait. Are there workarounds that can be put in place to buy you time until you can get to it? So we need to look at these things, and triaging will probably be about 10 to 15% of your day. As tickets are coming in, you're triaging them, and they may have high, medium, low. They may have a number system. Almost any IT group you have may work into one of a couple different methods of how to prioritize these tickets. And so you may have one person dedicated to triaging things that's coming in, and then the others are jumping on tickets to take care of them. And the actual taking care of and solving the tickets, that would be called tackling tickets. So once they are triaged, they're set in their priority order, and people start going in and grabbing tickets to take care of, they're tackling those tickets. So those are two big aspects of what you'd be doing on a day-to-day basis in IT. The other things that you would be dealing with is installation and tests. So if you're rolling out new software, you're going to have to install this software across the entire network. Every single computer in the company needs to be installed with this new software. Wow, that's a lot of different computers depending on the size of your company. It's a lot of work. What is the best way we can do this with minimal disruption to daily operations? So when we're doing something like that, we always have to take into account daily operations. Is this a 24-hour business, or is it 9 to 5? If it's 9 to 5, our best time to do installations and stuff like that is typically going to be after 5. Business is shut down. People have gone home. We're not disturbing them. It gives us time to implement a lot of these new systems, make sure they function. If they don't function, roll them back. But typically, you're not going to be given this stuff and say, okay, all this has to be done by tomorrow. The entire company needs to have this installed and updated by tomorrow. You're typically going to have like a month, a week, or what have you. You're going to have a length of time to be able to do this so that you can hit batches at a time and cause minimal business disruption as possible, because that is going to be critical, especially for things like that. Testing. As it was mentioned earlier, updates come out all the time. Now, as an update comes out, do you just want to push it out to the entire network and be like, all right, we're good to go? No, because especially if you have homegrown systems, apps that were developed in-house, we do not know how our applications and systems are going to react to this new update that has come down the pipe. So what we need to do is we need to test it. So you'll have a sandbox environment with various virtual machines that you'll install these new updates on and see how it interacts and interferes with systems we already have in place. So you're going to run tests on updates. So when you don't have tickets and you have updates coming out, your job is going to be sitting there testing updates that have come out, security patches, various things like that, to make sure they're not going to interfere with your systems that are already in operation. If they do cause massive interference, obviously you do not want to push it out. You want to see if a patch has come out that has addressed this issue, or see if there's a workaround or something like that. Or it may be a case where you just don't install that update. I know with my previous company, with the phones, because of the applications they would have installed upon these phones, it would be 6 months after an update has come out that we would be allowed to actually update it, because they would want to run the tests on the phones, make sure everything's okay, it wouldn't disrupt our business, things like that. So there was always a lag between an update coming out and us implementing it. So one of the things you may do is turn off automatic updates on all your systems in the company, and even make it so that employees can't update it unless they have administrative authorization, because you don't want somebody accidentally updating the system and then causing problems within their own computer. So installation and tests. So that's another aspect of it. And then finally, respond to in the moment issues. This is also known as being hijacked. So if you're on site and you have to go help somebody, and you're en route to go help them, and somebody just kind of grabs you and says, "Hey, I got a quick problem. Can you help me real quick?" That's a response to an in the moment issue. Or if somebody just kind of walks in with a problem, comes down to your office and walks in and says, "Hey man, I can't get my email," or it isn't really my work computer, but can you help me out with my personal one? You're not really supposed to do that, but these are requests that inevitably will come in over time. So these are your 4 main aspects of your day. Obviously, the largest portion of your day is going to be spent tackling tickets on the service support and help desk side of it. Triaging is going to be about 10, maybe 15%. Installation and tests, probably, 10 to 20%, depending on the time of year or, the types of systems you have. And responding to the in the moment issues can vary greatly depending on what's going on. So any questions so far with regards to that? All right. Real quick, little quiz. Pause the recording, give you about 4 or 5 minutes.